Okay, time for part two. The beginning of the story, the actual story, because everything up until this point was just like the prologue. You're welcome. So, at the end of Time's line, basically, after the effects of his line that it had on everything inside the universe, um, we we see ourselves with the final lights just gone, everything, black holes gone, everything. There's nothing left, to the point where even the dark matter that I forgot which kin summoned it, but even the point where the dark matter stopped really existing. Now, Death saw that, and I mean, it's the death of his child, I guess, But then he found himself back in the nothing that Balance had created originally. Um, and then he sees life just, there. Um, from his point of view, they looked like they were just waiting, and life was holding a book that, it didn't disappear with everything else. It was just there. Life was reading it. Looked at Death, and the few words that came out of Life's mouth, just not yet. There's still more to come. This is something you make. It holds all knowledge, and it has not yet ended. Then a man in all orange fades into being. All he has to say was, "Oh, good, just in time." Then time fades into being. Yeah, it's funny. He's freaked out. He sees that Death and Life have met again, and well, they failed their mission. And this was funny because instead of "oh God," he's "oh Father," because their father was. Anyways, the man in orange hands Death a book, the same book, and explains you have to make. Oh, sorry, you have to keep trying. There's more that needs to be done if you want to win. And then everything just kind of explodes, and everyone gets separated again. And and then Death meets him. No name, but a power of all knowing. Death realizes he might be dead. All knowing explains that at the end of Time's line, things restart due to the universe finally dying. All knowing explains that Death was his creator, his father, and now needs to find him, create him once again, as his creation happened before Time made his line. But this event still exists, just needs to play out again. And so begins the plan. This is very summarized. When I wrote this, I was still thinking of how this properly plays out. So, Death finds out that he's in this, for lack of better words, this back room of the universe, and he meets All Knowing. He doesn't really have a name, and Death, like, subconsciously knows that this being is beyond even his power. And they have a discussion, and it's summarized, but basically it comes down to the explanation that Death needs to write this book because the book is utilized in the plan to reunite with Life before the end of Time's line, because if they do, it would basically destroy the fabric of Time's line, allowing them to no longer be separated by that barrier um, that time basically set up, the box and outside of his line in the universe. And so that's basically the gist of it. So basically, it says get them back together. Them just being together is enough to just rip all of reality apart. And then they get to live happily ever after, I guess. And as most people do when they're scared, I guess, or angry enough, they just don't really think it all the way through. But that's the plan. That's the plan that Death comes up with to get life back. And so then we begin the multiversal jumping around to create his little army that he needs to distract all the other gods, or at least most of the more powerful gods, so that way he can have the opportunity to rip a hole in the fabric of space and time to pull life into that time's line, so that way their being together will essentially destroy everything. Now, the plan basically is All Knowing explains. Oh yeah, I didn't know I write this down. I wrote this down. Yeah, it's basically everything I just said. So All Knowing explains that he's explained that he is a what? Explained that he is as Death needed to tip the first domino to cause the chain of events that let All Knowing come into existence, and give Death a book that can show or tell all that All Knowing knows. So All Knowing is a deity outside of even the fifth dimension. And so that's why, from his point of view, all of the events that transpire in our third dimension, he's able to observe it as if, like I was explaining, before time created his line, everything's all at once, but also sequentially happening. So he knows everything, basically. And Death creating All Knowing will create the book to give to Death to basically start the war. It's unnecessarily complicated, and none of this comes up after, like during the actual story. This is just for my sake, because I thought it was fun. Anyway, so now, as this would be the only time All Knowing would be able to physically chat with Death, since he is a higher being now, he won't be able to come back down. All Knowing then had to explain that as well as Death was, why, and why he was all powerful in the dimension he existed in. Oh yeah, he explained to Death what, basically his origin and the other three. It was a long conversation, to say the least. In the end, the two worked out a few plans to stop the gods, open the box in between, allow life and death to live happily ever after. It was a long conversation. Then All Knowing threw Death back into Time's line. Alright. Now, these stories are. Woo. Jesus, that's not what I meant to do. These stories are kind of. It's not like that they're vaguely made, but what I do have of them is still kind of in, the workshop. So Death finds. Oh, wait, which one is this one? We're born among the kin of gods. Oh, yeah. So Death can jump there are many methods, but Death is able to figure out that he can jump between the sorry. God damn, it's like midnight right now. Death finds out that he's able to jump between the multiple universes. Now, like I said, there's multiple ways to do it. One of them is through a type of black hole. It basically acts like a wormhole between the universes. There are different types of black holes. I will not explain that. So moving on, he basically finds a way to get to a new universe, but each universe is kind of different in what it does to the people. So for him, when he jumped to this dimension, it turned him to a kid, like a little, I don't know, like 8, 7, maybe 6-year old. Like he's a kid, like a little baby kid. And it wipes his memory, so he doesn't remember anything. Now Death finds himself as they were when they first existed. Yeah, it's like 7 or something. I guess from our point of view, how do I say it? Like his interpretation of his age, if compared to a human. Comparably, he'd be like 7. God years, I don't know, like a couple bajillion years old. It's just gods. Now, and on some kind of rock, this universe's version of Earth, predating life on Earth, before the moon was even created. Because I think there's a theory that the moon was created by a meteor smacking into Earth, and then it exposed all the magma. And the debris ended up collapsing, created our moon. So, before that, basically. Now, Death also couldn't remember anything, right? Yeah. He gets taken in by a small group of gods, calling themselves the Protectors. Very noble. They claim they want there to only be gods in reality, in this universe, and that no other being should exist. Yes, this is a speciesism, I guess. They don't like lower life forms, basically, which is such a weird concept. I mean, it's like if we as humans try to eradicate. Well, I guess we kind of do. I was gonna say like ants, like we as a human society decided, hey, you know what, ants, they gotta go. They gotta go. They're taking our jobs. And so that's basically that point of view. It's really random. But moving on. They claim yeah, I just said that. They fight with another group of gods. They want all forms of life to exist, have a chance in this plane of reality. Death finds that both sides want power to kill each other, and in that struggle, Death finds out that what needs to be done to set in motion the chain of events that will lead to total victory. Spoilers: he scatters them. He throws them all into different black holes, and he's just like, "Fuck you." He can be a bit of a dick sometimes. Okay, so then that's as far as I ever wrote out. But the colorful vigilantes, that one's
funny. Basically, I mean, it's just a bunch of vigilantes, like Batman or something. But instead of cool names like Batman, they just go by different colors. Like there's a hero called Blue, Orange, villain called White. I think I called him. Yeah, White. Anti hero, right? Because he kills people. He's black. Well, his superhero name's Black. Sorry. He's played by a zombie, or in this universe, undead. Because they're not like zombies. They're like totally functioning humans. They just so happen to have died and come back to life. Also, their eyes are burnt out of their socket, so that's a good tell. So in my stories, when someone dies, they meet life, and that's you know kind of like the joke, reincarnation. But anyways, life is the god that basically allows people to get reincarnated. And she decides everything. Now, in the box that she's stuck in, she gets the library of everything. And being stuck outside of time, um, basically, she has had read all of the books, all the infinite books, basically. Because times and gods and crazy stuff, basically, that's the gist. She knows everything just as much as All Knowing does. The only difference is that she's not a high enough life form to create a book that can basically say everything, right? She just knows everything. But the thing is she also doesn't know everything. Because again, being outside of time, she has had read all of them, while also simultaneously having never read anything. Very confusing. Now, when someone goes there, because I mean, even our universe, thousands of people die every day. So, living outside of time, it's like a queue, and everyone gets a turn basically. But being outside of time, when they get reincarnated, it can be done at any point in the time that life decides to choose, um, which is really funny because life and death are beings above time. Balances kin, his children. So their magical divine abilities have an effect around them, but not to them. Does that make sense? Like, for death, they ripped out his divinity and his physical form, but his actual spirit, like his actual being, they would never be able to harm him. Like, genuinely speaking. They could hurt him, but not, like, kill him, right? And that's kind of why these three gods, in my story, they're considered true gods because they are absolute immortals. Nothing can kill them. Um, and then I realized that was kind of dumb, so I created weapons that could kill them, like Death's Scythe has the ability to kill even those three, but he doesn't make that until a lot later in the story. So, but yeah, I mean, there are weapons that can kill higher level beings. So, I just figured it would be an easier balancing kind of tactic. But other than that, what was I saying? So yeah, life can bring people back. Now, if for whatever reason the individual wants to go back to their previous life, and life, for whatever reason, decides to let them, their soul would go back to their physical body through, because I've heard that the eyes are the windows to the soul. So The soul goes back through the windows, basically, and essentially incinerates the eyes. Now they get to exist back in that physical form. They can still see because God and magic and shit, but they have no physical eyes. So it is a weird thing, and it does come up in one of the later stories. But anyways, the vigilantes. I mean, it's basic superhero villain stuff. I mean, so it's nothing crazy. It does get like super dark towards the end, because the villain does win. Um, so yeah, I just thought it'd be funny. Now this next one, it's pronounced Hanite. Actually, I have no idea. Hanite. Um, it is a play on the genie trope. So basically, there are these aliens, right, that have the ability to grant any power, like any wish. Basically, we'll go with wish for now, and I'll elaborate a little further. But the thing is, they can only do it for other beings, and these creatures are fucking what is it called? Like chaotic neutral. Just all of them. They're all like that. Uh, and they find planets to be their hosts, like to have hosts, so they can grant wishes. And they just love to cause chaos. It's just enjoyable to them. So basically, it just follows that. And so the wishes they can grant are 3 wishes, right? The first wish. Now each wish is limited. Like they can't. They're not like all powerful gods, but they can grant the user supernatural abilities, like the ability to control fire, the ability to summon cold weather, you know, and whatever they wish for, they you know. Now the second one is that their ability has to be tied to some kind of physical object. So that second wish is what that object is. So say someone wants a gun, and so now every time they pull out their gun, the weather gets super duper cold and like to sub-zero degrees, right? You know. But yeah, right. That's just the general idea of that. And now the third wish, which they don't tell the hosts about. They don't say how many wishes they get. They just say, "Hey, make a wish. Hey, make another wish," and then they don't say anything about the third wish. But some people did figure out there are third wishes, and obviously, you know, gatekeeping it, because I mean, a third wish is uber overpowered. Basically, the third wish is a detractor of your opponent. So, say, you know, going back to the, you know, cold weather guy with a gun, his third wish could be that my opponent cannot use their abilities. Now, again, they're not all powerful, so that would be limited. So instead of they can't use their abilities at all, they can only not use their abilities for the first 5 minutes of the fight, which is super overpowered, right? Because I mean, if you're going up against someone and then you can't use your powers for 5 minutes, I mean, you're dead instantly. Like, there's no getting out of that, right? So, anyways, yeah. So that's the third wish, which almost no one ever knows about. There's only like 3 or 4 people in this world that know about that third wish. Now, this next one, oh yeah. Okay, so this I made this title just off of nothing. Like, I just thought it would be funny to make a really long title, just kind of hitching a ride on the recent Japanese cartoons that have been coming out, where it's like the whole story is basically the title. I lost my sight for 3 minutes. Then a evil entity gave me the power to see all for a price, not my soul. This is basically All Knowing's story. This is how he basically gets his his this is how he's born, basically. I don't have a lot about the story worked out, except for what the title describes. And as far as the price, the price is the book. He has to make the book, like that is the requirement for him to get all these abilities. Um, yeah, I don't think it'll be a great story. I'm sure I can make it funny and interesting, but it's not a great premise to start with. So moving on. God of War meets Death. Oh yeah, yeah. I had just beaten God of War recently, and I was like, man, wouldn't it be funny if the God of War was a female and met Death and fell in love with him? That's the story. It's just a love story. It's so bad, and it's really funny because Death doesn't reciprocate. Um, and so it's like this really kind of also really sad story of this God of War realizing that they have no chance. Moving on. Oh yeah, another fucking zombie story. I don't have a lot of this one worked out either yet. Okay, please stop doing that. I mean it is what it says. It's just another zombie story. There's zombies, you know. I like zombies. I think the zombies are cool. So I wanted to write a story about zombies. Um, I don't know exactly yet what's gonna happen, but you know, zombies. You know. And then eventually, because I'm gonna create a few more stories, but eventually it all converges into the singular point, which is the war, I guess, the final war that Death plays onto the other deities, the higher level deities that can be a real bitch and a half for him to have to deal with. All of these stories are basically Death building a small little army to distract these deities long enough for him to get what he wants out of, you know, pulling life out of the box. Now these next stories are basically the lead up, I guess, to that war, right? Because this right here, the convergence, is basically the declaration of war, and then these are the events that take place that start it off, you know, up until where it reconnects at the end. It gets there. Oh, okay. You get the end of the story, where the war actually ends up happening, and then you know shit goes down. Yeah, I don't have this one either. So, story of Pink is so there are gods of color. There's a god for everything, you know, everything. Um, so there are gods of colors, all the colors, even colors we as humans can't see. And so it basically follows this story of these gods that were. Okay, let me rephrase. So it's not following these gods. Death killed these gods and fused their divine souls, the soul and the divinity that they have, right? He kept it together. He fused all that to a human soul, basically. And he created this weird hybrid that he could control in a weird way. And basically follows the story of these things as they try and travel the universe and you know bring happiness to everyone. As you know, along the way they find out that not everyone wants to be happy and rather just conquer and destroy everything. And basically, it's just them struggling to fight that. And then here is Blue. Blue is the main like war person for Death. Like he's the one that kind of helps a lot, because Death, he's mostly a spirit, right? So he doesn't have a physical form. So he recruits Blue to do a lot of the heavy lifting for him, and Blue's basically the guy that handles a lot of these stories for him. Blue is a part of the Vigilante Killers, and he's basically the one that gets that worked out. He's in this story as well as a side character, but he helps the main character do what needs to get done, so he can be a part of the war efforts. He's actually not in this one, but he's in most of them. And again, there's a few more that I'm kind of workshopping right now. So, but yeah, so he's pretty much like the main general kind of guy. And so here at this point, he's trying to do what Death did, which is make human hybrids with other higher life form entities, right? Because even the mortal creatures the gods create are not equal. If a higher tier god creates a mortal creature, that mortal creature would be better than a lower tier god's mortal creature, which is complicated to explain. But yeah, so think of us as humans as like kind of more or less the middle ground on that list of where we would land. But then there are higher gods that would have created other mortal creatures that would be higher in ability than humans, right? Now, the cool thing about humans in this story, my stories, is that we were granted the ability to adapt, which most others are not able to do. Most of these creatures were designed to exist in the place that they do live, right? So, like, lava creatures were designed to live in lava, and they do. And so living outside of lava is not something they would ever do because it would just straight up kill them, But we as humans have the ability to adapt to that to a degree, obviously. But in this world, we could entirely adapt given enough time. Now, Blue experiments to basically skip that and get straight to the now you have lava abilities and can turn into a lava monster at will. And then this is basically when that comes back up about the undead people. Turns out there's a lot of them, and they just kind of do underground work like assassinations and shit. And they get found out and get hunted down. It's really horrible and really sad, really racist shit. And then, it's just basically these, slightly different humans trying to not die. That's pretty much the whole story. It's really grim. And then here is, I guess, the prologue to the start of the war. At this point in time, the Earth has seen human civilization rise and fall bajillions of times. I mean, at this point, what is it called? The Pangea. When Pangea's reformed, I forgot what it's called. But since all the continents are essentially going to re-collide at the other edge of the Earth, at that point is when this story takes place. Basically, when all those landmasses have rejoined together, and there's like this giant lake in the center. That's when this story takes place. Like super far into the future, and it's basically Blue getting his soldiers ready to fight the good fight. And then this one is when they do fight that good fight, and you know what, they win. Death gets to be with life, and they don't end up destroying the fabric of everything, because they end up just going into a higher dimension. They, all knowing, found a way to allow them to exist in the fourth dimension, so they don't have to interact with our third dimension. And so yeah, It's a happy ending for everyone, except Blue. I mean, he goes to the ringer. You know, he was the main soldier guy. He recruited everyone, and you know, during the war, pretty much everyone dies. It's pretty sad, pretty grim. But those are the stories basically. And there's a few more that I'm workshopping right now. Trying to work out a little more of the details before I throw them up on the list, because there is an order of events that does take place. Um, so I just want to make sure I put it together correctly. Like there's another story I want. Um, well, you know what? I'll keep that to myself for now. But that's pretty much it. That's everything so far. Um, after this video, I'm gonna actually start live streaming myself writing these books out, and I don't know. It seems like it'll be such a boring live stream, but it'll give me a good reason to just sit here and actually type it up. I might do other stuff, but that would be the intent, to just sit here and write. With all the, you know, 0 people that I know will watch. But yeah, that's what's gonna happen next. I don't know when that'll happen, but at some point in the near future, I'll live stream myself writing up one of these stories. I don't know which one I want to do yet. Most of these ones up in the front at the beginning, I'm never gonna write out. Outside of these 2 videos that I made, most of these stories won't see the light of day. Outside of like maybe a few passing comments throughout the rest of these stories. But yeah, I just wanted to put it all here, so that way I never lose it. Because I mean, obviously it's just an Excel sheet, and so if something happens to this save, it's all gone. Because it's saved to my computer, it's not saved online. Because I don't have enough storage, I guess, is what it keeps saying. So yeah, if I lose this save, all this is gone. So yeah, and these videos are just basically a record for myself. Okie dokie.